Hello, everyone. This is a brief class on the Recad document. As you well know, Alabama license law requires that you, the licensee, present to the consumer the different ways that you can represent them in a real estate transaction. For the agent, there's a couple of important things that I wanted to stress. If you'll notice at the top, it says this is for informational purposes only. That means it is for the consumer to inform the consumer of the way that you can represent in a real estate transaction. Also, this next line is for the agents or the licensees that says this is not a contract. This does not obligate one party to the other. This is, again, strictly a disclosure. You are required by law to present this to the consumer as soon as reasonably possible and before any confidential information is given. Now, in Alabama, there are a couple of different ways that you can represent legally. You are allowed to represent as a single agent. That means you only represent one party. A couple of words in there, represent. You don't help, you don't assist, you are representing this person as an agent. This can only be done with a signed agreement. If you're working with a buyer, the only way that you can work for the buyer as an agent is with a signed buyer's agency agreement. If you're working with a seller, the only way that you can represent the seller as an agent is with a listing agreement signed. Subagency is going to be done away with, is no longer used in Alabama in a real estate transaction. So I won't spend any time with that. A limited consensual dual agent, I want to spend just a few moments with that. That is a licensee, either the individual licensee or licensees in the same company who have agency agreements with one party or the other, and they're going to participate in a transaction together. Limited meaning limited in the information that you can disclose to one party or the other. Just because you have the buyer or the seller in the transaction doesn't mean that they can receive any more leverage than the next party. Consensual means both parties have to agree. The buyer and the seller have to agree to let you and or Capstone represent each party as an agent. Dual meaning there's going to be two parties represented, the buyer and the seller, and they will be represented in an agency capacity. Transaction broker, that is your default position. If the consumer does not want to obligate themselves to an agency relationship with the licensee, then your default position is going to be as a transaction broker. Now, the next couple of paragraphs I want you to pay attention to. Alabama law imposes the following obligations on all real estate licensees. So meaning, regardless if you're representing as a transaction broker or a single agent, you have these obligations by Alabama license law. Notice the next paragraph. This says if you're working with a licensee who is not your agent. In other words, if you are helping someone in a transaction brokerage position, these are some of the things that you can do. Not limited to, but you can do. If you'll notice, a real estate transaction can be completed legally, ethically, and completely by someone representing as a transaction broker. So just know that nobody is getting penalized by someone representing as a transaction broker. A couple of other things that I want to stress. The last line says the Alabama Real Estate Commission requires that the real estate licensee to sign, date, and provide you a copy of this form. You being the consumer in this case. You as a licensee are obligated to present and have this signed by you and dated that you presented this to the consumer. The consumer's signature is not required, but is greatly appreciated. Please stress to the consumer, this is not obligating one to another. There is not anything that is established by this. You are just informing them of the different ways that you can represent. Also, regardless of whether a person goes to contract or not, you still have the obligation of recadding. So if you're showing property, you have to recad the person. If they decide not to buy, you still are obligated to keep that document. You cannot throw it away just because there was not a transaction that resulted from you working with this person. Alabama license law does not state that you keep only recads or that you recad anybody that is in a real estate transaction. So I hope this clarifies and may clear up some questions that you might have. We'll talk to you soon.